Hi, I'm Michael von Herff, and welcome to the second installment of our Vodcast on Fleishman-Hillard Election08. And this week we're taking a slightly different approach. We're going to offer perspectives from the right and the left on a significant policy initiative. And on my right is one of our conservative blog rollers, that's Terrance Oakey, and on the left, one of our liberal blog contributors, Sylvain Beaudry. And one of the things we promised in these vodcasts is we were going to try to move beyond the media's coverage of the horse race, such as it is in this election campaign, to look at some of the bigger policy issues that we think are going to resonate after the election on the 15th of October. So, Terrance, why don't you start with an announcement that was made 2 weeks ago that we around here think is pretty significant.
Yeah, no, I think the Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago made what is one of the most important policy announcements of the campaign, and he announced changes to Canada Investment Act and also indicated that his government would be open to further foreign investment in both the uranium sector and in transportation, specifically airlines. He also announced that the threshold for which takeovers would be subject to the Canada Investment Act would increase from $300 million to $1 billion. Given that the coverage around the hollowing out of Canada and some of the foreign takeovers in the last couple years, I would have expected a much stronger reaction from the opposition Liberals and the NDP. What we saw, though, was silence. There was no reaction to it at all. And, does this signal that the Liberals have ceded this ground to the Conservatives? Or does it also give the Prime Minister some room to maybe consider other areas in which to increase direct foreign investment?
So, Sylvain, we've got the screaming that was occurring 2 years ago about hollowing out. And liberalization of two bedrock economic nationalist sectors, uranium mining and air transportation. And now we're not hearing anything from the Liberals and the NDP. What are we to make of that?
I think that it's still a major issue for the Liberal Party and probably for the NDP. I think the reason why it hasn't made the top of the charts when it comes to reactions from the parties is because of the nature of the campaign and the fact that there's a lot of focus on the politics of the campaign, maybe because of the fact that we have overnight polling, which is a new phenomena, and a lot of the focus of the political parties is on politics and less on policy.
So, Terrance, you're saying that if indeed the Liberals and NDP have ceded this ground, you think there's scope that the government would go further. And there was one area that wasn't in the announcement, but in the follow-up Q&A came up, and that was bank mergers. So where do we think that fits in the context of these new ownership restrictions?
Right, I think that the Prime Minister and the government's been clear that bank mergers are not currently on the agenda and not a priority for the government. But given what's happening in the U.S., I think the government is willing to take whatever steps is necessary to ensure that our financial institutions are strong enough to weather any storm that's emanating from the United States.
So, Sylvain, let's say the Prime Minister, after an election, if Stephen Harper's government is returned, as the polls seem to be indicating, bank mergers back on the agenda, upping the ante, will the Liberals stay quiet?
I think what will be critical is if the Harper Conservatives get a majority or not. If they get a majority, they pretty much have a blank check to be able to move ahead with more bold conservative or economic policies. If they don't have that majority government, I can guarantee you that the Liberal Party and the other opposition parties are probably going to try to attempt to stop bank mergers or even some of the investment announcements that the Harper government did.
Right, but I think I think whether there's a majority or minority Conservative government, the Conservative Party has put out their plan. Currently, it doesn't include bank mergers, so I don't think that there's any. I think that the plan is clear, and whether it's a majority or a minority, that these are the steps they're going to seek to implement.
So clearly, an issue to watch, and like so many others, it may come down to majority, minority, and who needs to put water in their wine. Anyway, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.